Kathleen Folbigg, once labeled as Australia's worst female serial killer, has recently been released from prison. Born in 1967, Kathleen spent 20 years behind bars after being convicted in 2003 for the deaths of her 4 children, Caleb, Patrick, Sarah, and Laura. These tragic events, occurring between 1989 and 1999, shook the nation and led to her receiving a 40-year prison sentence, later reduced to 30 years with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The case garnered significant media attention, painting Kathleen as a heartless mother who had murdered her own children. Key pieces of evidence included her personal diaries, which were interpreted as confessions by the prosecution. Kathleen's seemingly emotionless demeanor during the trial further fueled public opinion against her. However, her recent release has sparked renewed interest in the case, as new scientific evidence suggests that her children's deaths may have been due to genetic mutations rather than foul play. In 2021, a team of medical experts uncovered genetic anomalies in the Folbigg family that could explain the sudden deaths of her children. This groundbreaking discovery led to a new inquiry in 2023, which ultimately concluded there was reasonable doubt about Kathleen's guilt. As a result, she was pardoned and released from prison. Now 50 years old, Kathleen stands as a symbol of the potential for wrongful convictions and the importance of continual scientific advancements in the pursuit of justice. Her story raises critical questions about the reliability of circumstantial evidence and the role of new technologies in re-evaluating past convictions. Kathleen Folbigg was born on June 14, 1967, in Sydney, Australia. Her early life was marked by tragedy and instability. Kathleen's father, Thomas John Britton, had a violent history. On January 8, 1969, when Kathleen was just 18 months old, her father murdered her mother, Kathleen May Donovan. He stabbed her 24 times on a street in Sydney, a brutal act that left young Kathleen an orphan. Her father was subsequently arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 15 years in prison for the murder. Following her mother's death, Kathleen was placed into the care of Deirdre and Neville Marlborough, a foster family in Newcastle. This new home, however, was far from a refuge. The Marlboroughs were known for their strict and controlling nature. They did not officially adopt Kathleen, meaning she remained under the legal guardianship of the state. Kathleen's life with them was marked by stringent rules and limited freedom, which made her childhood challenging and restrictive. Growing up, Kathleen became increasingly curious about her biological family. She learned about her mother's murder and her father's imprisonment, a revelation that deeply affected her. This knowledge added to her sense of not belonging, both in her foster family and in the world at large. Despite the support from some school friends, Kathleen struggled with feelings of isolation and confusion about her identity and past. After graduating from high school, Kathleen decided to leave the Marlborough household to seek independence and a fresh start. In 1985, at the age of 18, she moved in with her school friend Billy Joe. This move marked a significant turning point in her life. Billy Joe's family provided her with a sense of normalcy and support that she had not experienced with the Marlboroughs. One evening in 1985, while out at a club with Billy Joe, Kathleen met Craig Folbigg. This period of Kathleen's life, though filled with challenges, also held the promise of new beginnings. Her marriage to Craig marked a new chapter, where she hoped to leave behind the pain of her early years and build a family grounded in love and care. However, the couple's dream of a happy family soon faced unimaginable tragedies, leading to a series of events that would forever change their lives and cast a long shadow over Kathleen's future. Kathleen's early life and background are crucial to understanding the complex and multifaceted nature of her story. The traumas she experienced and the challenges she faced shaped her into the person she became, influencing her actions and reactions in the years to come. These early experiences set the stage for the heartbreaking events that would later unfold, impacting not only Kathleen, but everyone around her. In 1985, while out at a club with her school friend Billy Joe, Kathleen met Craig Folbigg. Craig, a 24-year-old employee in the mining industry, was immediately drawn to Kathleen. He was kind, caring, and provided her with a sense of security that she had longed for throughout her difficult childhood. Their connection was instant, and they quickly developed a close and loving relationship. Kathleen and Craig's relationship progressed rapidly, After only a short period of dating, they decided to move in together. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in Kathleen's life, one filled with hope and the promise of a stable, loving family. On September 23, 1987, Kathleen and Craig got married. The wedding was a modest affair, but it was a joyous occasion for the couple, who were deeply in love and excited about their future together. In the early years of their marriage, Kathleen and Craig were determined to build a happy and nurturing home. They shared a strong desire to have children and start a family. Kathleen, in particular, was eager to become a mother. Having grown up without her biological parents, she was determined to provide her children with the love and stability she had missed in her own childhood. Craig supported her dream wholeheartedly, and together they began planning for their future family. Their life together in the late 1980s was characterized by mutual support and affection. Kathleen found in Craig not just a husband, but a true partner who stood by her through thick and thin. They enjoyed simple pleasures, like spending evenings together, going out for dinners, and planning their future. Craig's job in the mining industry required him to be away for long hours, but he always made sure to spend quality time with Kathleen whenever possible. During this period, Kathleen took on the role of a homemaker. She managed the household, ensuring that everything was in order. Her days were filled with routine chores and preparing for the family they both desired. The couple's home was always welcoming, reflecting the warmth of their relationship. Friends and family often visited, noting the strong bond between Kathleen and Craig. As time passed, the couple's desire for children grew stronger. They discussed their plans for parenthood extensively, dreaming of a large family. Kathleen was particularly meticulous about her health, ensuring she was in the best condition possible to conceive and raise children. She read numerous books on parenting, childcare, and nutrition, preparing herself for the responsibilities of motherhood. Craig, on the other hand, focused on providing financial stability for the family. He worked diligently, often taking extra shifts to save money for their future children. Despite the demanding nature of his job, he remained committed to their shared dream of a family. His dedication to both his work and his marriage was evident in the way he balanced his responsibilities. The couple also enjoyed traveling together. They took several short trips to nearby towns and scenic spots, creating memories that strengthened their bond. These trips provided them with a break from their routine and allowed them to spend quality time together. Each journey brought them closer, reinforcing their commitment to building a life together. Kathleen and Craig's relationship was not without its challenges. Like any couple, they had their disagreements and misunderstandings. However, they always managed to resolve their issues through open communication and mutual respect. Their ability to support each other during difficult times was a testament to the strength of their bond. Kathleen and Craig Folbigg's first child, Caleb, was born on February 1, 1989. The couple was overjoyed at the arrival of their son, who seemed healthy at birth. They took him home, filled with hopes and dreams for their new family. However, it soon became evident that Caleb had a medical condition that made it difficult for him to breathe through his nose. This condition caused him to have noisy breathing, especially when he was feeding or sleeping. Despite their efforts to care for him, tragedy struck just 19 days later. On February 20th, 1989, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Kathleen found Caleb unresponsive in his crib. She immediately called for an ambulance, but despite resuscitation efforts, Caleb was pronounced dead. The cause of death was ruled as sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. This devastating loss left Kathleen and Craig heartbroken, but determined to try again. The grief of losing Caleb was immense, but Kathleen and Craig found strength in each other. They decided to have another child, hoping to bring joy back into their lives. Their second child, Patrick, was born on June 3, 1990. Patrick's birth brought new hope and happiness to the family. The early months of Patrick's life were relatively uneventful, and the couple was cautiously optimistic. They monitored him closely, fearful of a repeat of the tragedy they had experienced with Caleb. However, on October 18, 1990, at around 3:30 in the morning, Kathleen was awakened by Patrick's cries. When she went to check on him, she found that he was having difficulty breathing and had turned blue. Craig rushed into the room to find Patrick unresponsive. He immediately performed CPR while Kathleen called for an ambulance. Paramedics arrived quickly, and Patrick was revived and taken to the hospital, where he was diagnosed with epilepsy and cortical blindness. Despite the challenges, Kathleen and Craig were determined to care for him. They learned how to manage his seizures and took every precaution to keep him safe. Tragically, on February 13, 1991, at 11:45 in the morning, another devastating event occurred. While Craig was at work, Kathleen found Patrick unresponsive. Despite her desperate attempts to save him, Patrick was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. The official cause of death was attributed to complications from his medical condition. This second loss was a severe blow to Kathleen and Craig, testing the limits of their emotional resilience. They leaned on each other for support, trying to find a way to move forward. Determined to have a family, Kathleen and Craig decided to try again. The couple's third child, Sarah, was born on October 14, 1992. Sarah's arrival brought renewed hope, but also a heightened sense of anxiety. Like her brothers, Sarah also had health issues, particularly with her breathing. Kathleen and Craig were vigilant, hoping to prevent another tragedy. They were in constant communication with their pediatrician and took Sarah for regular checkups to monitor her health. Despite their best efforts, on August 29, 1993, at 10:45 in the evening, Kathleen found Sarah lifeless in her crib. The cause of death was again ruled as sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. This third loss was another crushing blow to the couple, leading to increased strain on their marriage. They sought counseling to cope with their grief, but the repeated tragedies took a heavy toll on their relationship. Despite their grief and the strain on their marriage, Kathleen and Craig decided to try for another child, hoping that this time they would be spared further heartbreak. Their fourth child, Laura, was born on August 7, 1997. Laura's first year of life brought a semblance of hope and joy back into the family. Kathleen and Craig were extremely cautious, implementing every safety measure recommended to prevent sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. On August 7, 1998, the family celebrated Laura's first birthday with a small gathering, marking a significant milestone they had not reached with their other children. There was a sense of relief and cautious optimism, as they believed they had finally overcome the curse that had befallen their previous children. However, just 6 months later, on March 1, 1999, at 12:15 in the morning, Kathleen found Laura unresponsive in her bed. An autopsy was conducted, but it could not determine the exact cause of death, listing it as undetermined. This fourth tragedy led to an anonymous call to the police, raising suspicions about the unusual pattern of deaths in the Folbigg household. In examining the lives and deaths of Caleb, Patrick, Sarah, and Laura, it becomes clear that Kathleen and Craig experienced an extraordinary series of tragedies. Each loss compounded the previous one, creating a devastating cycle of grief and suspicion. The pattern of their children's deaths, all within such a short period, was both unusual and heartbreaking, leading to a complex and controversial legal case that would unfold in the years to come. The Folbigg family's story is a tragic tale of hope, loss, and the relentless pursuit of answers in the face of unimaginable grief. Following the tragic death of their fourth child, Laura, on March 1, 1999, an anonymous call to the police raised suspicions about the unusual pattern of deaths in the Folbigg household. The authorities began a thorough investigation, looking into the medical histories and circumstances surrounding the deaths of all four children. The repeated losses, all within such a short period, were highly unusual and prompted deeper scrutiny. As part of the investigation, the police reviewed medical records, conducted interviews with family members, friends, and medical professionals, and examined the physical evidence from each death. One of the most significant pieces of evidence came from Kathleen's personal diaries, which were discovered during a search of the Folbigg home. These diaries contained entries that expressed Kathleen's inner turmoil, fears, and self-doubt regarding her abilities as a mother. The entries in Kathleen's diaries raised serious concerns. Phrases such as, "I am my father's daughter," and "I deserve to be punished," were interpreted by the investigators as potential confessions of guilt. The diaries also included reflections on her children's deaths and her emotional struggles. The police believed these entries suggested a pattern of frustration and possible motive for harming her children. Craig Folbigg, who had been supportive throughout their previous losses, began to harbor suspicions about Kathleen's involvement in the deaths. His growing doubts were influenced by the diary entries and the consistent pattern of the children's deaths. Craig cooperated with the authorities, providing additional context and information about their family life and Kathleen's behavior. On April 19, 2001, after gathering sufficient evidence, the police arrested Kathleen Folbigg. She was charged with the murders of her 4 children, Caleb, Patrick, Sarah, and Laura. The charges included 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter, along with related charges of inflicting grievous bodily harm. Kathleen maintained her innocence, asserting that the children had died from natural causes, but the mounting evidence against her led to a highly publicized trial. The arrest and subsequent charges were based largely on circumstantial evidence, including the pattern of the children's deaths, the diary entries, and expert testimony. The prosecution argued that Kathleen had smothered her children, pointing to the lack of physical evidence of natural causes in the autopsies and the perceived confessions in her diaries. They contended that her frustration and emotional distress had driven her to commit the acts. The case against Kathleen was built on the premise that the statistical improbability of 4 children dying of natural causes in one family was too great to ignore. The prosecution brought in medical experts who testified that while SIDS and other natural causes could explain 1 or possibly 2 deaths, the likelihood of 4 such deaths was exceedingly rare. They argued that the consistent pattern of the deaths pointed to foul play. The defense, on the other hand, argued that the children had indeed died of natural causes, pointing to the history of SIDS in the family and the genetic mutations discovered in the children. They challenged the interpretation of the diary entries, asserting that they reflected a mother's grief and guilt rather than confessions of murder. The defense also highlighted the lack of direct physical evidence linking Kathleen to the deaths. Kathleen's arrest and the charges against her marked the beginning of a long and contentious legal battle. The trial, which took place in 2003, became a focal point for debates on maternal infanticide, the reliability of circumstantial evidence, and the interpretation of personal writings. The case drew significant media attention, influencing public opinion and adding to the pressure on all parties involved. The trial of Kathleen Folbigg began on April 29, 2003. The courtroom was packed with media and spectators, all eager to witness the proceedings of what had become one of Australia's most notorious cases. The prosecution and defense presented their arguments over the course of 7 weeks, each side determined to prove their case. Key evidence presented by the prosecution included the entries from Kathleen's diaries. The prosecution argued that these entries were implicit confessions of guilt. They pointed to specific phrases where Kathleen expressed feelings of frustration and self-blame, interpreting them as admissions that she had harmed her children. The prosecution also introduced the concept of Meadows' Law, formulated by British pediatrician Sir Roy Meadow, which suggests that the deaths of multiple children in one family, if unexplained, should be considered suspicious and likely the result of foul play. Medical experts for the prosecution testified that the statistical probability of 4 children in one family dying of natural causes was extremely low. They argued that the pattern of the deaths pointed to deliberate actions. The prosecution claimed that Kathleen had smothered each of her children, using the lack of definitive natural causes in the autopsies to support their argument. The prosecution also highlighted Kathleen's stoic and emotionless demeanor during the trial as indicative of her guilt. The defense countered these claims by arguing that the children had died from natural causes, including sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, and other medical conditions. They brought in their own medical experts who testified about the genetic mutations discovered in the children, which could explain their deaths. The defense argued that Kathleen's diary entries were a reflection of her grief and guilt as a bereaved mother, not confessions of murder. They emphasized that there was no direct physical evidence linking Kathleen to the deaths of her children. Kathleen's defense team also challenged the application of Meadows' Law, arguing that it was based on statistical probabilities rather than concrete evidence. They pointed out that each child's death had been initially ruled as natural causes and that the prosecution's case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. The defense sought to portray Kathleen as a loving mother who had been devastated by the loss of her children. Throughout the trial, Kathleen's stoic demeanor was scrutinized by both the prosecution and the media. Her lack of visible emotion was portrayed as a sign of her guilt, with media outlets often depicting her as cold and unfeeling. This public perception added to the pressure on the jury to reach a guilty verdict. Craig Folbigg's testimony was a pivotal moment in the trial. He testified against Kathleen, recounting the events leading up to the deaths of their children and his growing suspicions. Craig's testimony was emotional and powerful, reinforcing the prosecution's narrative that Kathleen was responsible for the deaths. His decision to testify against his wife underscored the deep divisions and suspicions that had developed within the family. On May 21, 2003, the jury delivered their verdict. Kathleen Folbigg was found guilty of the murders of Patrick, Sarah, and Laura, and the manslaughter of Caleb. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison with a non-parole period of 30 years. The verdict was met with mixed reactions from the public and the media, with some believing that justice had been served, while others questioned the fairness of the trial. Kathleen's defense team immediately filed an appeal, arguing that the verdict was based on flawed interpretations of the evidence. In 2005, her sentence was reduced to 30 years, with a non-parole period of 25 years, following a review of the case. Despite the reduction, Kathleen remained behind bars, continuing to maintain her innocence. The case continued to spark debate and controversy, particularly around the use of circumstantial evidence and the interpretation of personal writings in criminal trials. In 2018, a significant breakthrough occurred in Kathleen Folbigg's case. Geneticists began to investigate the potential for genetic mutations to explain the deaths of her children. This line of inquiry was prompted by advancements in genetic science and the growing understanding of how genetic mutations can lead to sudden and unexplained deaths, particularly in infants. Researchers discovered that Kathleen and her daughters, Sarah and Laura, carried a rare genetic mutation known as CALM2. This mutation is associated with a condition called calmodulopathy, which can cause fatal cardiac arrhythmias. The presence of this mutation in Kathleen and her daughters suggested a possible explanation for the sudden deaths, challenging the earlier assumptions that the deaths were due to smothering or other unnatural causes. In addition to the CALM2 mutation, geneticists also identified a different genetic mutation in Caleb and Patrick. This mutation, known as the SCN5A mutation, is linked to a range of conditions that can cause severe epilepsy and sudden cardiac death. The discovery of these genetic anomalies provided a plausible alternative explanation for the deaths of the Folbigg children, one that was grounded in scientific evidence rather than circumstantial interpretations. The implications of these genetic findings were profound. They suggested that the deaths of the Folbigg children could have been natural and unavoidable, caused by inherited genetic conditions rather than any criminal actions by Kathleen. These discoveries prompted a re-evaluation of the evidence and led to a new wave of advocacy from scientists and legal experts. In 2021, a group of 90 scientists, including 2 Nobel laureates, signed a petition calling for Kathleen Folbigg's release. They argued that the new genetic evidence created reasonable doubt about her guilt and that her conviction should be reconsidered in light of these findings. This petition highlighted the need for the legal system to incorporate advancements in scientific understanding and to remain open to new evidence that could impact past convictions. The advocacy from the scientific community brought renewed attention to Kathleen's case and led to a formal inquiry in 2023. This inquiry, conducted by former Chief Justice Thomas Bathurst, aimed to assess the validity of the new genetic evidence and its implications for Kathleen's conviction. The inquiry was thorough, involving testimony from leading geneticists, medical experts, and legal professionals. During the inquiry, experts presented detailed analyses of the genetic mutations found in the Folbigg family. They explained how these mutations could cause sudden death in infants and young children, often without any prior symptoms. The experts also addressed the statistical improbability of 4 children in one family dying of natural causes, arguing that the presence of these rare genetic mutations made such an occurrence much more likely. The inquiry also revisited the original trial's use of Kathleen's diaries as evidence. Psychologists and forensic experts analyzed the diary entries, providing context for Kathleen's expressions of guilt and self-doubt. They argued that these entries were typical of a grieving mother and did not constitute confessions of murder. This reanalysis cast further doubt on the prosecution's interpretation of the diaries. On April 26, 2023, the inquiry concluded with a report from Justice Bathurst. The report stated that there was significant reasonable doubt regarding Kathleen Folbigg's guilt. Justice Bathurst recommended that her convictions be quashed, citing the new genetic evidence and the expert testimonies presented during the inquiry. He emphasized that the advancements in genetic science provided a compelling alternative explanation for the children's deaths, one that was not available at the time of Kathleen's original trial. The role of scientific advancements in re-evaluating Kathleen's case cannot be overstated. The discoveries of the COM2 and SCN5A genetic mutations provided a credible explanation for the deaths of her children, one that did not involve criminal actions. These findings prompted a thorough re-examination of the evidence and ultimately led to her release. The case of Kathleen Folbigg serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of integrating scientific knowledge into the judicial process and remaining open to new information that can illuminate the truth. On June 5, 2023, Kathleen Folbigg was released from prison following the conclusion of the inquiry led by Justice Bathurst. The inquiry had found significant reasonable doubt regarding her guilt, largely based on new genetic evidence that suggested her children's deaths were due to natural causes. This moment was both a relief and a new beginning for Kathleen, who had spent 2 decades behind bars maintaining her innocence. Upon her release, Kathleen was greeted by a small group of supporters and friends who had steadfastly believed in her innocence. Her release marked the end of a long and painful chapter in her life, but it also signaled the start of a new battle for justice and compensation. Kathleen's legal team immediately began preparations to seek compensation for the wrongful conviction and the years she had lost in prison. Kathleen's current status involves rebuilding her life and seeking justice for the time she spent incarcerated. Her legal team is pursuing compensation from the state for the wrongful imprisonment, arguing that the original conviction was based on flawed interpretations of circumstantial evidence and that the new genetic findings provided a credible alternative explanation for her children's deaths. This fight for compensation is not just about financial restitution, but also about acknowledgement of the mistakes that led to her wrongful conviction. In December 2023, the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal officially quashed Kathleen Folbigg's convictions. This decision was based on the conclusions of the 2023 inquiry and the overwhelming evidence that the deaths of her children were likely caused by genetic conditions rather than any criminal actions. The court's decision brought a sense of closure to the legal battle, officially recognizing that Kathleen was wrongfully convicted. Kathleen's case has sparked significant discussion about the justice system and the importance of scientific advancements in re-evaluating past convictions. It highlights the need for the legal system to remain open to new evidence and to ensure that convictions are based on the most accurate and up-to-date information available. For Kathleen, the journey to rebuild her life continues, but the official quashing of her convictions marks a significant step towards justice and vindication. The aftermath of Kathleen's release underscores the broader implications of her case. It serves as a powerful reminder of the potential for wrongful convictions and the importance of integrating scientific advancements into the judicial process to prevent such injustices in the future. Kathleen Folbigg's story is a harrowing tale of loss, injustice, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Her case underscores the critical importance of continually reassessing past convictions in light of new scientific evidence. As we reflect on her journey, it is a powerful reminder of the potential for wrongful convictions and the vital role of scientific advancements in the quest for justice. If you found this video informative and engaging, please subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with others who might find it interesting. To stay updated on our latest videos, hit the bell icon for notifications. We would love to hear your thoughts on this case and any other topics you'd like us to cover, so please leave your comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.